Before the start of the demographic transition, life was short. Births increased, growth was slow, and the population was young. During the transition, first mortality and then fertility declined, causing population growth rates first to accelerate and then to slow again. Moving toward low fertility, long life, and an old population. But before we start, let us first define some of the words that will be encountered all throughout the video.
Global demography. Global demography refers to the number of births and deaths per 1,000 people. On a worldwide basis, the difference between these rates is the rate of a population growth. Within regions or countries, population growth is also affected by immigration and emigration. Demographic transition refers to a model that describes the historical shift of population patterns in relation to fertility, mortality, and population growth rates. Mortality. In demographic usage, the frequency of death in a population, so when we say mortality decline, it means the number of deaths per time decreases. Fertility. The quality of being able to produce children. As a measure, the fertility rate is the average number of children that a woman has in her lifetime and is quantified. Baby boom. This is the sudden increase of newly born babies in a short period of time.
The theory emphasizes the point that the boost in economy and industrial growth directly affects the population structure of human beings. As more money is pumped into the national or international economic systems, the overall fertility or birth rate and mortality or death rate decline.
The changes in population growth rates and the effect on population can be shown on the demographic transition model. This worldwide demographic transition has brought about significant changes, changing the individual's economic and demographic life cycles. Populations are being restructured. Many questions and controversies are raised by these trends. These are the issues that was raised by this trend. In the past, there was a general fear that high population expansion in third world nations would hinder economic development, but most economists dismiss these concerns. Similarly, environmentalists believe that the world's population has already exceeded the biosphere carrying capacity, while most economists are not concerned about the expected 50% growth in population over the next century.
Wages would fall if population growth accelerated, creating an increase in mortality as a result of starvation, war, or natural disaster disease. In other words, agony. This mortality reaction was dubbed the positive check by Malthus. Depressed wages would also lead. Wages would fall if population growth accelerated, creating an increase in mortality as a result of starvation, war, or
Although fertility was high within marriage, the total fertility rate was low. The overall fertility rate was moderate, ranging from 4 to 6 children. 5 children are born to each woman. Life expectancy was also reasonably high. The average life expectancy at birth is between 25 and 35 years. Although was strongly influenced by high infant mortalities well as childhood.
For example, life was difficult in late 19th century in India. The average life expectancy was in the low 20s. Average fertility was 6 or 7 births per year, describes a woman. The next one is the situation in Taiwan around 1900s was similar. Widespread fertility data for the decades following total fertility rates in the United States were confirmed by World War II. The third world countries were often ranked 6 or higher. However, recent work suggests that the demographic situation in China may have been closer to the European experience than previously thought.
The classic demographic transition starts with mortality decline. Around 1800, mortality began a secular decline which marked the beginning of the world's demographic transition. Meanwhile, most low-income countries around the globe first experienced a mortality decline in the early 20th century and accelerated significantly after World War II.
These are few factors that contribute to the decline in mortality. The first one is the vaccinations and preventive medicines. The first stage of mortality decline is due to reductions in contagious and infectious diseases that are spread by air or water. Dahil sa mga invented vaccinations or preventive medicines, kamunti ang mga taong nagkakaroon ng contagious diseases at nagresulta ito sa pagkababa ng mga taong namamatay dahil sa partikular na sakit. Example nito ay ang smallpox outbreak. Nagsimula ito noong 18th century na nangyari sa iba't ibang parte ng mundo. Marami ang namatay at nagsuffer sa panahong ito. But because of the vaccines, nagkaroon ng solusyon ang nasabing outbreak at unti-unting bumaba ang bilang ng mga namatay dahil sa sakit. Next is improved personal hygiene. Germ theory states that certain diseases are caused by the invasion of the body by microorganisms. Organisms too small to be seen except through microscope. Nagkaroon ng improved personal hygiene dahil sa pagtaas ng income ng mga tao at dahil kumalat ang impormasyon tungkol sa teoryang nabanggit at dumami ang naniwala rito. Dahil sa tamang paglinis ng katawan, ang mga bakterya na maaaring maging sanhi ng sakit ay nababawasan. Nagresulta ito sa pagkababa ng bilang ng death dahil na-eliminate nito ang mga posibleng maging sakit na dulot ng mga bakterya. Moreover, improvement in nutrition also plays a factor in mortality decline. Malnutrition weakens the body defenses and makes individuals more susceptible to various diseases. Adequate nutrition supports a strong immune system, enabling the body to better fight off infections, diseases, and other health threats. Ang nutrisyon sa ating katawan ay isa sa mga vital aspects na kailangan natin pagandahin para magkaroon ng magandang pangangatawan. At dahil na rin sa pagtaas ng income ng mga tao, nagkaroon ang mga ito ng abilidad para makabili ng sapat at masusustansyang pagkain. Ang maayos na nutrisyon ay maaaring makamit sa pamamagitan ng pagkain ng mga healthy foods. Mas maayos na nutrisyon means better quality of our body, which also means longer life expectancy. Hindi na rin bago sa panahon noon ang pagkamatay dahil sa pagkagutom. Famine is a severe shortage of food in a particular region or country, resulting in widespread hunger, malnutrition, or even starvation among the population. It is a complex crisis that arises from a combination of factors. May mga lugar na kung saan ay nagkaroon ng kakulangan sa pagkain dahil sa iba't ibang rason. Isang maaaring dahilan nito ay ang sobrang laki ng populasyon at hindi namimit ng supply ang demand sa mga pagkain. Ngunit dahil sa naging improvement sa transportation, nagkaroon ng abilidad ang isang lugar para mag-export ng mga pagkain at makamit ang demand dito. Nakatulong din ang pagkakaroon ng malinis at maayos na imbakan ng pagkain para maiwasan ng mga bacterias o mabilis ang pagkasira ng mga ito. These improvements resulted in reducing famine mortality.
Ayon sa Geneva Foundation for Medical Education and Research, fertility in demography implies the component or output of reproduction for a certain country. It means that population and reproduction ng isang bansa ay nadidikta ng fertility ng mga mamamayan nito.
Relationship of fertility and mortality. Fertility and mortality are fundamental demographic measures that shape population dynamics. High fertility rates can lead to population increases as high mortality rates can decrease population size. Literally, magkabaliktad sila pero this inverse relationship is essential for understanding the growth and decline ng population. Studying the interaction between fertility and mortality ay makakatulong sa policymakers and researchers to analyze population trends, plan healthcare systems, and develop strategies for sustainable population growth and overall societal well-being. Determinants of fertility, biological and behavioral constraints. Sa biological constraints, ito ay tumutukoy sa mga pisikal na hadlang o limitasyon na maaaring makaapekto sa kakayahan ng isang organismo na magkaanak. Ito ay maaaring resulta ng mga hormonal imbalance, genetic na mga kondisyon, o mga sakit sa reproductive system. Sa kabilang banda, ang mga biological constraints sa fertility sa mga kalalakihan ay maaaring kasama ang low sperm count, mga genetic na mga issue, o mga kondisyon tulad ng erectile dysfunction. Yung behavioral constraints naman, ito ay ang mga personal na desisyon o mga pagpapasyang may kaugnayan sa reproductive health tulad ng pagpili na hindi magkaroon ng anak o ang paggamit ng mga contraceptive method. Kasama rin dito ang kawalan ng impormasyon tungkol sa fertility at family planning, ang kultura o relihiyon na nagbabawal sa pagkontrol ng pagbubuntis, at ang mga abuso sa droga o alak na maaaring makaapekto sa kakayahan ng isang tao na magkaanak ng maayos. Demography of fertility. Ito ay nag-iiba-iba by country and culture, social conditions, economic conditions, and as well as individual characteristics such as age. Generally, yung mga mas industrialized and economically developed na bansa ay may mababang fertility rate kumpara sa mga agricultural at less developed countries. Also, within countries generally, more educated groups with higher incomes have lower fertility kumpara sa mga mas mababang income. Ang mga pamilya ay nagkakaroon ng mas mababang bilang ng anak at kadalasang nagiging malaki ang pagkakaiba sa pagitan ng mga henerasyon. Historically, pag yung groups or class within a certain country ay napaganda ang living standards nila and pag ang isang bansa ay naging mas developed, yung fertility ay nagde-decline due sa adoption of fertility constraining behaviors or pag-control tulad ng limitation of sexual relations or marriage, practice of contraception, induced abortion at iba pa. This process is often referred to as the fertility transition. It refers to the shift from high to low fertility rates in a population, typically associated with socio-economic development, increased education, and access to family planning methods tulad ng nasabi ko kanina. Ayon kay Casterline, fertility transitions in East Asia have been particularly early and rapid, while those in South Asia and Latin America have been much slower. Dito na pumapasok ang mga factors na nabanggit ko kanina na pag umaangat economically ang isang bansa ay doon pumapasok ang fertility transition. Ang mga bansa sa East Asia tulad na lamang ng China at Japan ay ang halimbawa nito.
Both mortality and fertility rate determines the growth of the population. In fact, the population drastically increased from 2 billion in 1950 to 6.5 billion in the year 2006. Moreover, from the years 2005 to 2006, the world population gained 76 million people, with 134 million births and 58 million deaths.
There are significant differences in the population growth between developed and developing countries. This proves the existence of heterogeneity in birth, death, and migration processes along the time, which denotes the diversity among individuals in terms of aspects such as age, socio-economic status, educational attainment, culture, health, demography, and other else that influences the growth of population in a certain region or country. The following factors illuminates the mechanisms of global population growth and change. First is the crude birth and death rates. Isa ito sa pinakamabisang paraan para matukoy ang paglago ng populasyon. Ito ay tumutukoy sa bilang ng isinisilang at namamatay kada 1,000 katao. Ang total fertility rate naman ay tumutukoy sa bilang ng mga isinisilang kada isang bilang ng kababaihan. Sa taong 2006, kinakitaan ng pagbaba sa total fertility rate na 2.5 mula sa 5 sa taong 1950. Isa sa mga malaking sanhi nito ay ang pagbabago ng fertility rate sa mga developing countries. Ang infant and child mortality decline o ang pagbaba sa bilang ng mga namamatay na sanggol mula sa edad ng pagkasilang hanggang sa edad na 1 taon at mga bata na edad 1 hanggang 5 taon ay isang magandang senyales ng paglago ng populasyon. Sa katunayan, kinakitaan ng pagbaba sa infant mortality ang mga developing countries sa nakaraang 50 taon, kung saan mula sa 180 ay naging humigit kumulang 57 mortalidad kada 1,000 batang isinilang. Inaasahang ang bilang na ito ay bababa pa sa bilang na 30 mortalidad sa taong 2050. Panghuli ay ang life expectancy and longevity o ang average expected lifespan ng isang tao. Ang pagtaas ng life expectancy ay isang malaking senyales ng pagtaas ng bilang ng populasyon. Sa taong 2000 hanggang 2005, ang life expectancy sa buong mundo ay nasa 65 taon na higit na mas mataas kaysa sa 47 taon sa taong 1950 hanggang 1955. Inaasahang tataas pa ito sa average na 75 taon sa susunod na 5 dekada, kung saan ang mga developed countries ay inaasahang tataas sa 82 taon at sa mga less developed countries sa 74 na taon.
In many nations, the demographic landscape has changed as a result of the baby boom. A baby generation results from a first decline in mortality rates as evidenced by the experiences of various countries over the past century, because high survival rates produce more children than in previous generations.
Population patterns are also changed by migration. 191 million people worldwide reside in nations other than their country of birth. In fact, the United Nations predicts that about 2.2 million people will move yearly from developing countries to industrial nations over the course of the next 45 years. Since 1950, a significant shift from rural to urban areas has occurred in both developed and developing nations. In less developed regions as a whole, urbanization has increased from 18% in 1950 to 44% in 2006, while in developing countries, urbanization ranges from 52% to 75%. It is well recognized and understood how fertility, mortality, and growth rates have changed throughout the demographic transition. The systematic shifts in age distribution that occur as a result of the demographic transition and persist for a considerable amount of time after the other rates have stabilized are less clear. In India, the pre-transition total fertility rate panel A is approximately 6 births per woman, while the life expectancy panel B is approximately 25 years. The fall in mortality in India is 50 years ahead of the decline in fertility. Although this country's fertility shift is slower than that of East Asia, it resembles that of Latin America. There are 4 phases of this transition. Mortality drops most sharply at the youngest ages during the first phase of the transition. When fertility is still high but mortality starts to decline, this increases the proportion of children in the population and increases child reliance. The second phase, which may span 40 or 50 years, is characterized by a reduction in fertility which is followed by a decline in child dependency ratios which quickly falls below their pre-transition values. Increasing lifespan causes a rapid rise in the elderly population in the third phase, whereas low fertility causes the number of people of working age to grow more slowly. But the total and old age dependency ratios are quickly increasing. This phase in India lasts roughly from 2015 to 2060, and it would last longer if the simulation did not assume that mortality drop has ended. The total dependency ratio in India has reached a point where it was before the transition began, but child dependency is now low and old age dependency is high. It is likely that mortality will continue to fall in the 21st century, which will result in a continuation of the aging process for both individuals and population.
The second demographic transition is characterized by sustained sub-replacement fertility, diverse living arrangement beyond marriage, the disconnection between marriage and procreation, and a non-stationary population.
The second demographic transition emerged in Europe after World War II. The war led to an increase in premarital intercourse, and the age at first sexual intercourse declined in the post-war period. This can be partly explained by changing attitudes toward sexuality and increased freedom of expression that emerged in the aftermath of the war. The war created an environment where young people were exposed to new ideas and experiences, which could have been contributed to a shift in societal views on sexual relationship and the timing of sexual initiation. Lestegi and Pandika come up with the term second transition in 1986. These two describe the significant demographic changes occurring in low fertility countries. They observe a decline in fertility rates which below the replacement level of 2.1 births per woman, marking a departure from the post-World War II declines in total fertility rate progressed to levels well below the replacement level of 2.1 per woman in many European nations with similar social traditions, economic productivity levels, and demographic political institutions. In Greece, Spain, and Italy, for example, the total fertility rate bottomed out in the mid-1980s at just above 1.1%, almost one-half of the total fertility rate required for population replacement. It rose again during the first decade of this century, but the recent continent-wide economic recession appears to have induced yet another total fertility rate decline. One of the defining aspects of social demographic transition is sustained decline in fertility rates below replacement level. There are several factors contribute to this trend, which are cultural shift toward postmodern attitudes and norms, advancement in contraceptive technology, changing family structures. First, changing societal values and norms have shifted the focus from large families to individual fulfillment. Individual autonomy and career aspiration are highly valued. People tend to delay or have fewer children. Sa cultural shift na ito, mas inuuna ng mga tao ang personal na kasiyahan, pagpapayag ng sarili at pag-abot ng kanilang mga pangarap. Hindi na itinuturing na obligasyon ng lipunan o pangunahing layunin ng relasyon ang pagkakaroon ng anak. Mas pinipili ng mga individual na magpasya kung kailan sila magkakaroon ng anak habang nagpo-focus sila sa iba pang mga aspeto ng buhay tulad ng edukasyon, career at personal goals. Ang pagbabago na ito sa paniniwala at pamantayan ay nagbibigay ng mga malawak na kalayaan at pagpapasya sa pagpaplano ng pamilya at pagbubuntis. Another key aspect of the second demographic transition is the significant advancement in contraceptive technology. These innovations, such as the introduction of the contraceptive pill and intrauterine devices, have provided individuals with enhanced The advancement in contraceptive technology have empowered individuals to make informed decisions about family planning and spacing pregnancies according to their personal circumstances and aspirations. With greater control over their reproductive choices, individuals can. The second demographic transition is also characterized by a multitude of living arrangements beyond traditional marriage. Couples now delay childbearing until they are financially ready, loosening the temporal link between the marriage and procreation. Halimbawa nito ay ang pagkakaroon ng kasama sa buhay ng hindi pa kasal. Sa maraming bansa tulad ng Netherlands at Denmark, ang ganitong paraan ng pamumuhay ay naging karaniwan. Sa pamamagitan ng pagpili ng kohabitasyon, ang mga magkapareha ay nakakaranas ng mga benepisyo ng pagsasama at pagbabahagi ng buhay na hindi kailangang sumunod sa tradisyonal na pamantayan ng kasal. Nagkakaroon sila ng kalayaan na bumuo ng kanilang mga relasyon at mga struktura ng pamilyang batay sa kanilang sariling halaga at prioridad. Sa ganitong paraan, mas nagiging malaya silang magtuon sa mga personal at professional na mga layunin at nagdudulot ng pagbaba ng fertility rates na nakikita sa second demographic transition.
Theoretical motivations behind the second demographic transition provide further insights into its underlying factors. The second demographic transition involves cultural shift toward postmodern attitude and norms, Planned Parenthood, and it also involves rising female labor force participation.
Sa
Sa second demographic transition, nagkaroon ng cultural shift patungo postmodern attitudes and norms. Let's imagine a scenario where a society encourages comprehensive sex education and a Planned Parenthood. Sa Planned Parenthood, nagkaroon ng iba't ibang mga family planning programs and services. And sa second demographic transition din, nagkaroon ng culture of open discussion sa reproductive choices ng bawat isa. Under the theoretical motivations of the second demographic transitions are shift from king child to king couple. Another one is the Maslowian drift and rise of individualism. And last one is pushback against economic explanations. The first theoretical motivations is shift from king child to king couple. The cultural shift toward postmodern attitudes and norms ay ang naging primary driver ng second demographic transition. Halimbawa nito ay ang concept ng king child to king couple. In traditional societies, sa ating nakasanayan, ang pagkakaroon ng anak ang nagtutulak sa isang individual upang mag-asawa at magpakasal, at ang kanilang anak ang magiging sentro ng kanilang relasyon. Ngunit sa second demographic transition, nagpo-focus ang bawat individual o maaaring magkasintahan pa lamang sa kanilang mga gusto sa buhay. Katulad ng career, nagpo-focus sila sa kanilang career para ma-promote sila sa kanilang mga trabaho, pagta-travel, and other personal goals bago magpakasal o bago mag-asawa at bumuo ng pamilya. Kumbaga, ay nagiging list priority na lang muna nila ang pagbuo ng anak. Nasa isip na nila ito once settled na sila sa kani-kanilang mga buhay. Another important thing is the concept of Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood refers to the deliberate decision-making process involved in choosing the timing and number of children. Halimbawa na lang sa mga bansang tulad ng Germany and France, individuals have access to comprehensive sex education and family planning services. Another theoretical motivations under the second demographic transition are the Maslowian drift and the rise of individualism. Postmodern values prioritize individualism, self-actualization, and personal fulfillment. This value shift embodies the Maslowian drift. What is Maslowian drift? Maslowian drift is a shift toward higher order of needs of self-actualization and individual autonomy to motivate behavior once more basic needs like survival and safety have been satisfied. The last one under theoretical motivations is pushback against economic explanations. The second demographic transition also involves economic factors and rising female labor force participation. Dahil dito, nagkaroon ng tinatawag na quality-quantity trade-off concept, which explains the first demographic transition. Acknowledges the shift in priorities from having more children to investing in their quality upbringing. Sa mga bansang tulad ng Sweden and Norway, kung saan ang social welfare system nila ay nagpo-provide ng extensive support for families and childcare. That's why individuals ay naging feel more secure sa pagsisimula ng pamilya habang pinipursue nila ang kanilang mga career. Dahil dito, nag-increase ang female labor force participation that allows women to have greater financial independence and more control over their reproductive choices.